Michael Franti, and welcome to this week's episode of the Stay Human podcast. If you didn't hear last week's episode, I want you to stop what you're doing right now, hit pause on this one, go back and listen to last week's episode with our dear brother, Jeff Orlowski, who is a director, producer, and cinematographer of the award-winning films Chasing Coral and Chasing Ice, as well as The Social Dilemma, which is the number 2 most watched documentary on Netflix. And we're going to go in deep about the film. And so, Jeff, welcome back to this week's show. How you feeling? How's it been? It's been a week, man. What'd you do this week?
Awesome. It's been crazy. It went so fast.
Okay. Rip Van Winkle threw that one. So last week I was telling you that when my wife and I sat down to watch the film, she was on her phone. And I was like, look, Sarah, this is a film about social media. It's about manipulative programming. And yet both of us, I mean, I'm not trying to call out my wife because I'm equally as addicted to that infinite scroll. But the film helped me to understand things in a different way. For one, like the infinite scroll, that was like something that someone thought of to do. So just, we talked last week a little bit about what led up to the film. Talk to me now about like what was your starting point when you started getting into this film? Like, what was your intention? Did you just go into it with like open eyes and open ears, like we're just going to go down this path and go wherever it takes me, or did you think like, man, I'm hearing some stuff that is just blowing my mind that I need to share?
Yeah, a little bit of both. It was like early 2017. And it seems like so long ago now. I feel like it feels like the world has been criticizing tech for a really long time now. But in 2017, I didn't feel that anybody was criticizing Facebook or Twitter or the tech companies. It still, to me, at that time, felt like the rose-colored glasses and we were all still drinking the Kool-Aid. And come fall of 2017, I had now started to have a couple conversations with who became one of our main subjects, Tristan Harris, and another friend of mine who I'd known through Tristan, who's also in the movie, Jeff Seibert. We had a couple conversations, and Tristan started connecting me to some other people, and I started talking to people who worked at the companies. That was, for me, the most interesting part. Like, you could always get a critic from the outside, or a journalist or somebody who's like, they look at the problems at the companies, and there have always been critics, and that's really valuable and valid. When I started hearing from people who worked at Twitter, people who worked at Facebook, they worked at Google, at YouTube, and they were like, no, there's a problem with what we made. That was the light bulb for me, where it's like, hold on a second. This is like, I don't want to call it whistleblower territory, but it was like insiders who knew what was going on and had a completely different perspective. And it wasn't just one isolated person with one isolated story. It was a bunch of people from a bunch of different companies that said there's a consistent problem with all of these companies in the way that they're built and operated, in the way that their algorithms work, and what they're doing, what their incentives are, what their business model is. That was the thing. I think it was the consistency in different people.
Let's go into that a little bit about what we're talking about, just in case people haven't seen the film. About how these algorithms are constructed and what is the intention behind them.
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's a tricky one to summarize too, because it is really, really complex. Yeah. The technology is complex. Let me just start with this phrase that we use in the film that our subjects told us. It's this phrase that is a little trite even, but it goes, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. And when I first heard that, it hit me like a gut punch. It's like, what do you mean I'm the product? Like, how? I don't pay for Facebook, I don't pay for Google, I don't pay for YouTube, but I'm the product? And this is, in some ways it's an oversimplification, but I do think it's like a valuable place to start, because the platforms that we're not paying for, how is it that Facebook and Google are worth hundreds of billions of dollars? This is a $1 trillion industry. Where is all of this money coming from if we're not paying? And it's everybody's like, oh, advertising, advertisers pay. That masks what's really going on. It's not just that advertisers are paying. Advertisers are the ones putting money into their accounts, but what they're paying for is the ability to manipulate and micro-target very specific audiences. That in and of itself might not seem like a problem, but where the problem really comes into play is what Facebook and Google do to be able to provide that service, right? I need to reverse engineer you. I need to reverse engineer what's going to get Michael to keep swiping today, right? And here I am. Okay, picture me. I'm the algorithm inside. What's your social media of choice? Are you an Instagram guy, a Facebook guy? Instagram. All right, so I'm inside Instagram servers, and I've got all of the photographs in the world to show you. And I start testing a couple things. Do I show you this? Do I show you that? What's going to work on Michael today? Right? And what time is it? And time of day and day of the week. And weekends. Maybe he uses a lot Saturday morning, right out of bed, scrolls for an hour. What are those images that are going to keep Michael on? Because I now know I've spent a decade with you. I know what you like. I know what you don't like. I know that you click on this type of image every frickin' time, and this other type of image you haven't engaged with once. So here I am, I'm the algorithm, and I'm going to try to make some money off of you because, there's another part of the algorithm that places advertisements. If you're spending 10 minutes on Instagram, I could show you a couple ads. If I can get you to spend an hour on Instagram, I could show you a lot more ads, right? And so there are algorithms doing all of these functions. There's an algorithm that's going to figure out when to show you an advertisement, how frequently to show you an advertisement. There's a different algorithm that's going to fill that little box. What is the most susceptible thing right now? There are live auctions that are happening with these platforms. Basically, I mean, like if you do a Google search and you open up Google, a live auction happens immediately that Google basically is hosting to say who's going to spend the most money to show something in front of Michael right now with the search term. Right? This is how Instagram works. It's how Google works, how YouTube works, how Facebook works. All of these social platforms are driven by this incentive of what's going to get you to spend more time. How can I show you more ads? What's going to bring in more revenue? This is really, in my mind, one of the biggest problems here is that from a fundamental ground level, the entire way that these companies make money is built around something where the incentives are misaligned with society, right? And this is where they're great. We're using Zoom right now. We're having a conversation on Zoom. Somebody paid for a Zoom account so that we can talk for a long period of time. This is a technology platform that was built for us. We are the customer, and it's not trying to manipulate us. It's not trying to get us to spend more time on Zoom. It's not trying to ping you to say, hey, you haven't Zoomed anybody today. You should Zoom somebody today, right? That's not what Zoom is doing. That's not what FaceTime is doing, right? Those are neutral tools that we're the customer for, where they were designed with our intent in mind. That's not how Instagram operates. That's not how YouTube operates. That's not how Facebook operates, right? They have a completely different set of incentives. And it seems so innocent and innocuous. It's like, okay, so I'm scrolling. What does it matter if I spend a couple more minutes, or I clicked on a thing, or I clicked on an ad? It seems so innocent. But the real problem, I think it was innocent when these were really small companies, operating out of a dorm room. Now, Facebook's got 2.7 billion people on it. And when it puts something in front of you that's different than what it puts in front of me, and it gives you a particular story for a decade, and it gives me a different story for a decade, now you and I are actually, it's sort of eroding our ability to empathize with each other. I am being fed one version of the truth, and you're being fed a different version of the truth. I use this analogy. It's like we all are on our own Galapagos Islands, and we're all drifting farther and farther apart from each other. And you're going, your path, I'm going my path. And they become so far apart that they're incompatible at a certain point. Mm-hmm. That's how I think of these platforms, that the the ideas that we're exposed to actually shift and morph over time. And you get pushed down a particular worldview based on what the algorithms are feeding you.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
You know,
So
one of the
that's
things,
a big, yeah.
no, that was great. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in the film was just how it affects our thinking, that constant feedback loop of, you know, if I watched a flat earth video, now 10 other flat earth videos are going to come at
Right.
me, and then 100 other things that are going to come at me, that pretty soon, like, I believe the earth is flat, you know.
Right.
And it's not set up to be something that exposes you to multiple arguments or just
Right.
shows you all these different things. It's just,
Right.
it's going to take you wherever you keep clicking.
Exactly.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, once again, like, that's different for each of us, right? Inherently, it's giving us a personalized experience where, it's not like it's personalized for our benefit, right? That's the thing. It's not trying to it's not trying to optimize for truth. It's not trying to optimize for empathy. It's not saying, like, how's Michael going to live, a better life today? How are we going to, give you better wisdom and understanding of the world? How are we going to actually deepen your relationships with your friends and family? It's not answering any of those questions. It's not trying to. It's built around this goal where, hey, we make money if we can put ads in front of you. What can we do to get you to see more stuff so that you can see more ads? Like, that's the backbone of many of these platforms, unfortunately. I bring this up because social media could look completely different. Social media, you could actually imagine, like, having social media where you feel better after you use it, right? Like, that's just a baseline. Like, imagine something that made you feel better about your life and about the world when you used it. This is something that we've heard from countless people. They use social media and they immediately feel worse. And, you're comparing yourself to others. You're seeing everybody else's highlights reel. You're seeing, like, one of the big problems that we have with beautification filters. We're training an entire generation of youth to think that they are more liked if they change who they are. Like,
because they get more likes.
They literally get more likes, right? Like, take a photo of yourself, change it to make it unrealistic, and more people will like that version of you. Like, we're implanting that mindset into a generation of human beings. This is that it's just, like, such a manipulated, warped, like, messed up view of the world. Like, that is not how you want to raise a teenage girl, in my mind. Right? That's not going to make somebody more self-confident and have good self-esteem and operate and live in the world with grace and dignity. Right? We're dumbing down our humanity around the way these platforms have been optimized.
So people would counter that by saying, well, look, man, when the radio came out, everybody was screaming like Elvis is going to make all our kids go crazy. Then TV came out and TV was bad, and and then video games came, and video games were supposed to ruin the world, and that didn't happen. So what's the difference between those previous things and what social media does?
We've always had changing technology, but this is not like an incremental shift. This is, as one of our subjects, Tristan Harris, he answers this question by saying, it's like we're upgrading weapons, but then we just launched to the nuclear weapon. Right? This is not a small increase. It is a massive, monumental increase. We can go into a bunch of the reasons why that is. We haven't had something like machine learning artificial intelligence before. Right? Just what that is, machine learning artificial intelligence, it is a surprisingly capable and powerful set of software that can do what that phrase means. And it's a little long. I can unpackage it in a quick second. It basically is the notion that computers can learn on their own. You tell the software to figure out what is most effective on this young particular teenage girl, and it will try and test things over time to figure out the optimal options based on engagement patterns. And so that is not, imagine, like, You had your own private radio station that was broadcasted just to you, where somebody's sitting on the other side figuring out what's going to get you to spend more time sitting in front of your radio. Like, that's not what the radio did, right? And that's not even what a person is doing. There's no human sitting on the other side of the computer screen saying, let me mess with this kid today. We automated it. This is a scale and a level of sophistication and a level of data manipulation and data tracking that we really have never had before. We're all carrying around with us in our pockets a data emitting machine. Like, the amount of information that has been collected about us is astronomical. And so you have these for-profit companies collecting incredible amounts of data about us, using them against us, right? It's not like they're being used for us, they're being used against us. And they're being used with some of the most powerful supercomputers on the planet to reverse engineer what gets us to tick. I don't know if that, like, it is such a completely different echelon of technology compared to what we've had before. I really do think it's why the world feels so different in the last 5 or 10 years. We have hit this kind of curve, this exponential curve, and we're in this little crux period where things are going to continue to get wild too, I think, in my mind, unfortunately.
You know, when we look at this insurrection, it's like there was all these stories about voter fraud. Mm-hmm. And there was 60 different court cases where people were required to bring evidence into court to show that there was this voter fraud, mass voter fraud, and all those 50 cases failed. Mm-hmm. And you know, one can argue. You know, I come from the African American community, and there's been voter suppression for years.
Right,
that's you know, it's well documented. There's evidence to show that, but there isn't. You know, in this case of this election, yet so many people have been driven to believe it.
Right.
That this insurrection, it got into people's like heart, into their bones. Right. And, you know, I look at those people and at first I'm like, I want to discount them and just be like, they're idiots. How could they believe in this stuff? Mm-hmm. But they're not really. They're just, they just swiped on something one day and they're like, this sounds interesting. Maybe this is believable, and now pretty soon they're sucked into this funnel of stuff, and I'm equally sucked into my funnels. Like I love basketball highlights. If you go through my Instagram, you're gonna see like what did Steph Curry do today? Steph Curry did this. What did LeBron do today? Blah blah blah. You know, and other things that I'm interested in. But it's like if I go out into the world and I start talking to my wife, like, man, did you see what Steph Curry did? It's all over the news. She'll be like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, I didn't see that, you know? And the same thing goes for politics and the way that it has tribalized us.
Right.
And I feel like when I saw the film, I got to be honest, man, I left the film going, we are fucked. Like, how is this cap ever going back on this genie, you know? And how do we get out of this? I mean, how do we get to a point where people are taking things in with a larger perspective? I mean, is the answer just to shut your phone off? Like, I don't know, but it seems so depressing after I saw the film. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think the weight of these issues is really, really heavy. Before I hit that question, though, I wanted to just tap into one thing that you said a second ago around and bringing it back to the themes and ideas of empathy. In that working on this film for me gave me the ability to empathize with people that I probably don't agree with on politics or worldviews, where I have a greater sense of, oh, you might believe what you believe because you've been fed a particular story from an algorithm for years now. That's actually what got us into some of this work as well, was because of our climate change work. We were meeting people who denied the science of climate change. And I kept being like, where are you getting this weird information from? Like, how do you not understand the science? Where you know, what are your sources? And if I ever engaged with somebody in a conversation, it was actually pretty easy to like do the fact checking and dispel the myths. But But there's a lot of people who were confused about the science of climate change. And when we did the film, I realized, well, wait a second. If you are in a certain part of the country or the world and you do a search for climate change, the algorithms will give you different results in a Google search based on who it thinks you are. That blew me away, right? That notion, and we share that in the film. Like, if you are searching for something like climate change and you get different results, because literally results that might say climate change is real or climate change is not real, like that's the type of difference in scope, like polar opposite 180-degree different answers, based on whatever the algorithm assumes about you. So I think, just to go to your question around how do we get our way out of this, like, we need a massive rethinking and rebuilding of how our technology information, the technology infrastructure is functioning in our world right now. I've stopped using all social media. In the making of the film, I went from heavy multiple times a day, arguably addicted user of Facebook and other platforms, to cold turkey, stopped using them completely. Well, not cold turkey. I had to like wean myself off. It was actually a challenge, because I'd pick up my phone and I'd want to go, I've got some time to kill, and let me go check Facebook and what's going on, and let me scroll, let me post, and let me repost, and let me share. And I was posting stuff around the 2016 election and getting so much affirmation around, oh, here's an article, look what's going on. And I could feel myself getting pulled into a rabbit hole, and I was being affirmed by the algorithms and by the likes for it. And I think these platforms are toxic landscapes. They are polluted and toxic landscapes, and the more time you spend on them, the more you're putting your own brain and your own mind at risk.
So what was that like for you personally when you unplugged? What did it feel like? And how does
I
it feel today, not being in?
I was unplugging while we were making the film. And so I had this really tangible, it was such a weird meta experience for so many reasons. It was removing myself from the platforms while I was learning about how their algorithms work, and then feeling their resurrection algorithm. So they have a thing. They actually call it a resurrection algorithm, where if you leave their platform, they consider you dead and they try to resurrect you, and they try to bring you back to life to the platform. And so I started getting emails and text messages of photos of people, like, come see this photo that somebody posted, and on a frequent basis as I stopped using it, just to get me to come back. And I think because I was aware of the issue at this point, I was like, fuck this. I'm not going to go back now. Like, it made me almost more angry when I was witnessing what was actually going on. But it was also happening when we were in this really creative phase with the film. And I needed my creative energy and my creative time and clarity. And so I felt this kind of renewal of creative energy, because I didn't have this mental and emotional energy being sucked into the device as much. And so it gave me more headspace to actually do the work to make the film. So now I can't imagine going back to it. Like, there's nothing about it that's interesting to me. I get my news from news sources. I talk to my friends and family via just actual messages. I'll FaceTime. I'll still use Signal. I can still send messages. That's not a problem. But I don't do it through a Facebook or an Instagram or kind of a third-party manipulator.
I've heard of people doing fasts recently. Like a social Sabbath, basically.
Yep.
Like, I'm not going to use social media on Saturday or something like that. I've never done it personally, and it's something that I've been curious to do. Now, hearing you talk about it, I want to. I don't know if I'll completely withdraw, but I want to try to use less. And one of the reasons is I've got a 2-year-old. I actually have 3 kids. One who's 33, who was around as email emerged,
Right.
and as texting emerged, and he was one of the first people who was always texting his friends. Then my second son, he's turns 22 tomorrow. He
Mm,
came in as social media started to
right.
become a thing when he was a teenager. Um, and Snapchat and all these other kind of things. My son, who's 2 years old now, he's like grown up with it.
Right.
Like he doesn't there's not a time when he's going to remember where social media
Yeah.
doesn't exist. What advice do you have for families, for
Yeah.
parents, for teachers, for people who are working with young people on a daily basis about
Yeah.
how we can, coach them, how we can, I don't know,
Right.
show them the
Yeah, man.
realities of social media?
I don't think kids, and this machine just started up again behind me, but I'll just keep going. Um, I don't think kids should be on social media until high school at the earliest. And I don't think kids should be on social media, period, if they can avoid it. I think, we're old enough that we were able to grow and go through those life experiences without, like, middle school's hard, high school's hard. You don't need to add this additional layer of the social pressure coming from social media on top of it. It's hard enough, right? And when you're at that age, learning how to navigate the world and how to be a human and how to connect and how to socialize, we're now adding this layer that kind of like erodes that and is deteriorating that ability for real human connection. So I don't know. I don't think kids should be on it until high school at the absolute earliest, and if they can avoid that, they should. Look, what are kids looking for? They want their friend circle. They want their connection to other friends. You can have that not on social media. You can have a private text messaging group or a messenger group or on Signal, and you can send photos and you can connect with friends and you can still communicate. And it's part of the problem is that these platforms have become a performative place for people, right? And I'm all for performance. There's a value and time for that, but not necessarily every human for their entire upbringing. This is one of the things that I realized. I'd be at a film festival, and I'd be at a red carpet thing, or I'd see some celebrity at an after party, or I'm in a green room with somebody, and I found myself taking selfies with people just to post to social media, just for the likes, because I knew, hey, I'm gonna post a photo with this person. People are gonna friggin' love it, and I was doing it just for that performance factor. And there was one day where I took a photo with somebody, and I didn't engage with that person at all. I didn't talk to them. I didn't have a human experience with them whatsoever. I just went and stole a photograph for my personal affirmation device, right? And that's, I just started to feel really shitty about it. I really started to question, like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I taking these photos? What's the purpose? Like, what's it for? And it's not making me actually feel better. And in some cases, it might be making other people feel worse. Like, that was another realization. Like, look at how freaking good my life is, and you're at home, and you're not, you're not at this party with me and so right now. And it just became this realization, like, I don't know, there's that seemed really unnecessary and not really how I wanted to live my life. And it made it that much easier to sort of move away from that. And I haven't, look, I haven't deleted my accounts. I still kept the accounts, in part because there are people that the only way I know how to reach them is because of Facebook, that we are connected on Facebook, and I don't have their current email, or I don't have their phone number, or what have you. And so I sort of leave that open as a potential, breadcrumb trail back to people if I really, really needed to. But I never check it. I don't check those messages, and that just exists out there in the ether. But I don't check those platforms. There's another thing that I've installed. It's a thing called the Newsfeed Eradicator. So on my desktop, I have the Newsfeed Eradicator installed for Facebook and Twitter. So if I went to twitter.com or facebook.com on my computer, there would be nothing to scroll through. It literally takes the whole feed and it puts like some Zen quote there for you to read instead. And there's absolutely nothing to engage with. And it makes it easy because if, hey, I need to look up my friend's, phone number or something, I can go there and I can look up that friend and get connected to them or something, but not actually get sucked into the feed and I don't see advertisements or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the positive in this? What is the things that we've either learned about ourselves or that we've learned about social media that are or ways that we could perhaps change social
Mm-hmm.
media? What's the positive in it, man?
I think that the pandemic and the chaos of 2020 and this huge experience that we've all gone through as a world and as a society in the last year or so. I think this whole experience that we've had with the pandemic and the rest of 2020, I actually see a huge silver lining in all of it, in that for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, it has made people question like what is really meaningful to us. And I think what we know is that we are starved for connection. And these social media platforms sold us on an idea of connection, but they're not connection. They are one of our experts that we spoke to, this doctor and psychologist. He said that social media is connectivity. It's not connection. It's the when you connect with somebody, like I can see your face right now via Zoom, and
Yeah.
in the back of my brain and your brain, there are mirror neurons that light up. You can literally, like, your brain is responding to my physical body and engagement right now. And there's a connection and a level of empathy that happens through that doesn't happen on social media. I saw this amazing video on that somebody sent me online. Actually, it's this video of two dogs that were barking on opposite sides of a fence. And there's this fence on wheels, and it's this wooden fence, and two dogs just loud and going at each other. And then somebody slid the fence so that they could see each other, and they stopped barking when they saw each other. And when the fence was closed again, they started barking immediately, and the fence was opened again and they stopped barking. And it was, I mean, these are two dogs.
Sounds very familiar.
It sounds so right. It is the internet. Like our response, the way we engage with people via text only on a comments thread is not how you would talk to somebody face to face. These aren't designed around empathy. They're not designed around human connection. And for me, like, I've been FaceTiming with friends and family so much more. I've been really selective. Right? Who do I want to spend time in my life with? Who's worth spending time in my? I mean, you could spend your whole life just trying to appease the thousands of people that are quote unquote friends, even though you can't. We learned about a thing called the Dunbar number. The Dunbar number is this principle in psychology where you can only really have like 150 meaningfully close people in your life. Like you can't fit the human brain and the human experience can't fit more than 150 people in close relationships. I think it goes back to our, the size of tribes, the size of humanity as we evolved. And so I've been thinking through like, who's in my top 150 list? Those are the only people that I can commit meaningful amounts of time to. And let me deepen those relationships and sort of, let slide the trivial passing comment on a post on Facebook. It's not really that meaningful. So I don't know. For me, the silver lining is going back to these deeper roles and needs of human connection, real human connection with people that matter in your life. I'd rather, have a dinner party with friends, like make food and sit around the table and engage in a long conversation, rather than spend hours endlessly scrolling and kind of letting life pass you by as you're searching for the next like. That's my takeaway from all of this. And it's this is not to discount, of course, movements can be born and people can converse and engage and organize through social platforms. I'm not denying that. I also don't think that that's the only place where it can happen. And I also don't think that's where the most meaningful amount of change does happen. I think the most meaningful amount of change happens through, like we just spent, an hour plus having a deep conversation. I'd rather fill my life with that than ever going back to a social media feed.
Right on. You know, I've been thinking a lot about just what you talked about this new idea of wellness for me because when the pandemic
Mm,
hit, it was like, God, if I don't take care of myself, I could freaking die. It used to be
mm,
like, well, if I ate an organic salad once a week and go to a
right,
yoga class every now and then, I'm well.
right.
But there's this whole element of emotional wellness, mental
Yeah.
health that um, comes about through um, uh, just this time that we've had to be in isolation
Mm,
and not have the things that we're used to. And it's not like we're making these huge sacrifices, but it's just like it's not the way that life is normal for us, and it
right.
feels very different. And in some cases, people are making huge sacrifices, but um, the loneliness is one thing that has really uh, come up for me. It's like
Mm,
when I'm not able to see that, like you said, that 150 friends that I have, when
mm,
I'm not able to um, engage in the way that I want to, when I'm not able to go see a stranger in the store, or for me, when I'm not able to get out in front of an audience and play for a
right,
bunch of people and high five a
right.
stranger at the end of the night, it feels like something is really missing for me
Yeah,
in my humanity.
right.
And so I guess this thing, the last question I have for you is the same question that we ask everybody at the end of the show, which is, what does it mean to you to be human? How do you hold on to your humanity? How do you
Mm,
stay human?
mm. It's a beautiful question. I live in Colorado right now, and a lot of the pandemic for me has been out in nature. And I've been very fortunate that my partner has been out
Mm,
there with me, and we've been, in living together over this whole experience. And we've spent a lot of time camping. And one of the closing line in The Social Dilemma is from Jaron Lanier, and he's kind of making this joke about like, look at how beautiful it is outside. Go outside. And for me, the past films, Chasing Ice and Chasing Coral, were so deeply a physical and literal and embodied manifestation of a connection with nature. And I don't know if this is yeah, I don't really know fully where it's coming from for me right now in this response to you, but humans are a part of nature. We are not separate from nature. We can build
yeah.
buildings in cities and build skyscrapers, and we can live in boxes, and we can function and have food arrive and garbage disappear. But that's not the fullest extent and expression of being human in my mind. Um, for me, at least, being with a small group of people out in the wilderness has been one of the most, like, I don't feel a need for a phone whatsoever. If I'm outside, I can be walking by a lake or just meditating or sitting or anything. Just there's something about being grounded. I use the word grounded in the like literal representation of both like the electrical grounding, but a physical contact with the earth. And I don't know. This is not something that I really felt as strong of a connection of 10 years ago. But over the last few years, I think it's become a recognition more and more around like, I personally find tranquility and peace um, uh, and calmness and connection with Mother Earth, with the planet, in a way that I hadn't ever fully appreciated before. So I don't know. I think that's, at least on today, that's my thought and my response to your question there. I think we have really lost touch with what it means to be an animal species on this planet, and ultimately we are, right. That's where we've come from, and that's what we are. And um, we've come out of and from this planet, and this planet will probably one day return to planet Earth without humans. And the question is like, what does this ride look like that we get to take part in? And this little slice of human time and our individual human lives in this a couple dozen rotations around the sun that we get to experience. What is that for each and every one of us? It is such, I feel like life is such a precious and limited thing. How do you make the most of that?
Jeff, that's really powerful and just a really beautiful expression of humanity, and one that I really hope that everybody's listening just takes some of that time and gets outdoors, put your feet on the ground, take your shoes off, be out there with friends, be in nature, breathe the air, and put the phone down for a little while, And Jeff, man, it's been so inspiring just hearing about your life, man. You are a truly beautiful human, and to hear about your journey through as a kid to becoming a filmmaker, and just your empathy and your way of connecting with people and the planet through your art and through what you do. So keep doing it. For those of you who haven't seen his films, go check out Chasing Coral, Chasing Ice, The Social Dilemma. And what's next for you?
I'm looking for some time in nature, actually, now that we're talking about it. I need to get my fix. But yeah, we have a lot of ideas on a lot of projects, but we're focusing on one of the things that we do is an impact campaign. So we are working with The Social Dilemma, and we have a whole team of people. People can check out what we're doing at thesocialdilemma.com, and trying to make as much of a difference as we can with this film, and then we'll figure out the next one.
That's awesome. So I've been here with Jeff Orlowski, incredible director, producer, and cinematographer. And Jeff, thanks for being on the Stay Human podcast. If you didn't get a chance to listen to part 1 of this, go back and listen to it. And Jeff, thanks for being here, bro.
Thank you so much.